it's cool to see the connections I made. It's cool to get my own name out there, because even still, I get called Rob, or, oh, you're Rob Chrisman's son, and I don't know if that will ever change. But the podcast has certainly been an excellent medium for getting my own name out there, and being able to build the Chrisman brand too into a new form of media.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers, where we bring you professionals who share insight into the latest trends, tips, industry technology, and services to help you be a mortgage influencer in your mortgage business. Okay, everyone, we want to welcome you to our last episode for 2022 of the Mortgage Influencers. We are getting very close to Christmas and all those fun things around Christmas. And so, Ginger Bell, Carl just went to get his Santa's hat. Yay!
Well, mine doesn't look as cute as yours. Yours looks so much better.
Mine is truly a mortgage marketing animals hat. I mean,
See,
I wore this.
I look like a wino sitting, whatever.
I love it. Carl, thanks for joining us. Frank is getting started on Christmas, I think, and Scott is actually moving to Denver tomorrow from Austin. So he's doing a cross-country trip, and we have a special guest today, Robbie Chrisman. So Robbie, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, very happy to be here.
So before we get started, I'm going to let you do an introduction of yourself. And for those of you who are watching, you see Robbie Chrisman. If you know Rob Chrisman, yes, it's true. He is your father. So tell me, because you started out originating, and you were originating for a while, if I remember correctly, right?
Kind of. I started my mortgage banking career in high school doing summer internships at RPM in the East Bay. And I would actually, as a 15-year-old, because I didn't have my driver's license, I would hop on the BART train at 4:30 when odd characters were just starting to go to bed. And I did everything from doc drawing to working in the mailroom, just kind of odds and ends that a high schooler would do. And my first job in the mortgage industry as a full-time worker was actually after college, working for a company called SoFi.
Yeah,
they're more well-known for student loan refinancing, but they got into other aspects of financial wealth. One of those things was mortgages. And I ran the lock desk there and was director of capital markets. So they pushed me very hard to get on the origination side of things. Actually, they kept saying, "Don't you want to be a loan officer? Don't you want to make a ton of money? This and that." And I said, "I have morals." No, I'm kidding. There's a lot of great loan officers out there. I almost decided to underwrite, actually, because I thought underwriting would be a very helpful part of understanding the mortgage process, the kind of the science meets the art for how companies determine creditworthiness of borrowers. But my background is very much in capital markets, and I'm certainly a product of my father. I probably where I am without him, so I owe him a big thank you.
Nice. Well, and we just had your dad on a couple of weeks ago, and part of the conversation that we had with him is really this next generation of you coming into the industry, and how, Frank's daughter is getting into the industry, and just a lot of people who are tenured in the industry, have been in for a while, are fortunately corrupting all of you to come along. And so with your dad, and I love your dad, he's very humble and very smart, and I love sitting down and having a conversation with him. And so he is very proud of you for what you've done and getting into the industry. So I know sometimes as a kid of someone in the industry, it's hard stepping into those footsteps. But one of the things, and what I really want to unpack with you, is a big undertaking that you took on from what your dad does with the written word, and that's taking it and turning the daily blog post into a podcast. So whose idea was that, and how did that kind of transpire?
Well, let me back up a second about your influx of youth into the mortgage industry comment, because I've probably been going to MBA national conferences or Western secondaries or what have you for 15 years now at this point. And even 15 years ago was, oh, these people are getting ready to retire. Oh, there's going to be this influx of youth. And, over the last decade and a half, it's still the same, 60 something year old white guys. And there's, fortunately in the last couple of years, it seems like I am seeing a lot more younger people at these conferences, a lot more people of color at these conferences, a lot more women in positions of leadership at these conferences, which is fantastic. Considering the industry lends to all different types of people across the nation, all different boxes. And it's neat to finally see younger people come in. As a segue to the podcast, I kept telling myself, if I don't see that many young people that are out and about doing stuff in the mortgage industry, there has to be a huge opportunity. Because at some point people are going to leave and there's going to be a vacuum, or there's going to be opportunity to step up. The podcast wasn't even really our idea. It was from one of the sponsors of the daily email, or a lady who worked at a marketing firm that would contract with clients that would sponsor the daily email. She said, why don't you guys put this in podcast form? And my dad had heard that throughout the years. Hey, I love your email, but it's so long to read. I want to listen to it in my car, or when I'm having my coffee, or I'm going for a run or something like that. And so I said, screw it, let's do it. And one of my friends who was my age, I was living in San Diego at the time, he ran a successful podcast show. So he showed me the microphone to get, headphones, showed me the software to use and how to edit, how to pick out music, how to go about scheduling guests and all those sorts of things, how to publish it, how to promote it. And it's been more successful than I could hope. And I do owe my dad a big thank you there, because to have a podcast plugged from day one in a daily email that goes to 70 or 80,000 people, it's going to have instant traction. And I guess more selfishly, instant monetization potential. But I'm so very fortunate. I like in the news yesterday was, Matt Ishbia of UWM is buying the Phoenix Suns, and this is all over ESPN. I'm like, I've had him on the podcast. I've talked to this guy. It's cool to see the connections I made. It's cool to get my own name out there, because even still, I get called Rob, or you're Rob Chrisman's son, and I don't know if that will ever change. But the podcast has certainly been an excellent medium for getting my own name out there, and being able to build the Chrisman brand too into a new form of media, audio media.
Yeah, taking that to the next level is important. And Carl, a lot of what you do and really got you into where you are was from your podcast. And so you've seen a lot of the same results, right?
Yeah, video was the first thing that, which is what you're the queen of video, Ginger. The video was the first thing, which frankly, and I'm not saying this to be funny, is remarkable because I look how I look. I'm not your typical video person that you would expect to see on camera, but it worked for me really well. And Rob, just like you, the podcast, it's been a remarkable thing. And I'm seeing more and more loan officers actually doing it, not just the, thought leaders like yourself, Robbie, but the man, the woman on the corner, the man on the corner loan officer using podcast too. How long have you been doing your podcast for, Robbie?
It's been almost 2 years. I launched in February of 2021. So all of 2021, all of 2022, going on to 2023. So 5 episodes a week. So we're at almost 500 episodes.
Good for you, brother. Yeah. Do you find it pretty easy to get guests to come on?
Yes and no. I've been fortunate to have a strong Rolodex of individuals in the mortgage community, but at this point, there's a lot of PR firms that I've done work with and have relationships with, where they'll say, "Hey, there's this press release that came out. Would you like to speak to an executive at this company?" I'll say, "Yeah, sure, send them on." And then I try and get it to where it's more subject matter expertise than them just plugging their company. But that's been a real help for having interviews booked, is these PR firms.
Yeah, I found I don't like everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame, kind of thing. So I found getting I mean, I've literally had one person so far tell me no. And it was which it surprised me that he said no. Damon John, from the Shark Tank, which I've had conversations with him, so it surprised me that he said no. But he said, "Well, Carl, if I do yours, then I got to do everybody else that asked me too." And so I kind of get it. But as far as like having like local celebrity real estate agents and things like that to again from the loan officer point of view to connecting the real estate agents, like everybody wants to be on a podcast. Even if you're just getting, even when I just got started and had 10 downloads for the week, kind of thing, it was still pretty easy. So good for you, man.
Thank you.
How do you come up with the topics?
Well, so the podcast itself is based on the daily newsletter, which Daily Mortgage News is the name, is the overall genre of it. So every day there's new things coming out, whether it's the latest GDP or retail sales figures like we saw this week. There's things going on like Wells Fargo getting fined by the CFPB yesterday, $3.7 billion. So that's news. There's stuff going on with the Fed and the volatility in mortgage-backed security price. There's always something. So the topics kind of write themselves. When it comes to the interviews, that's a little more evergreen style of content a lot of the time. People talking about ways that they're expanding the credit box or the product box. I do try and mix it up where I have people come on to talk about current events like Fed happenings, or what we're seeing with affordability this year, things like that. But I'm fortunate once again, it kind of writes itself. I'm not having to dig super deep to find topics.
Yeah. Do you find the obviously coming from a large popular blog post, email blog post kind of thing, do you find the podcast is catching up with those platforms as far as like influencing and like when you're getting people to take action to do something, do you find the podcast is catching up with the others even though they had a head start, or are they so much larger that it's taken longer for the podcast to have the same?
I've been incredibly impressed and almost have to pinch myself at the growth in podcast numbers. If you put out podcasts on Spotify or Apple Music, you'll get a Spotify Wrapped for podcasters, and subscribers are up like 250% from last year. Several thousand people listen to each episode, which is crazy to me because I just publish it and then it's off there in the ether, and there's people going, "Oh, I listen to your podcast. Oh, I love your podcast." I'm thinking it's kind of a weird feeling that people you don't even know are listening to it. So. And I've been fortunate too, where people have, I've been in business settings and people have come up to whoever I'm talking to and said, "Oh, I heard you on the Chrisman podcast," or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's neat to see that. And there's been a lot of organic growth. I've driven by some adopt a highway signs and I'm like, should I put like a Chrisman commentary podcast on there to get a billboard off the side of the highway or something like that? But no, it's been great, and it keeps growing, and I actually wish more people would reach out because I never hear from these people. I see that there's a lot of people, but I never hear any feedback. I'm like, wouldn't you like to hear like, "Oh, your breathing was loud this morning" or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. I was at a concert, a play a couple nights ago. My Fair Lady was playing at a little concert hall here called the Ruth Eckerd Hall. And that sits 2,700 people. And so when you think about that, like here you're doing a podcast, whether it's an influencer like yourself or a loan officer, that might be listening to us today, it's like you're filling up the same size audience that this play is at. And I looked around, I turned around one time and looked around as there's 2,700 people that, dude, you can do that. Like every episode you have a podcast goes out, you're with a megaphone talking to those people. And the cool thing about a podcast, we did a study on this. The average person listens to a podcast the entire episode, which is remarkable. that in today's market, to be able to grab somebody's attention for more than literally 15, 20 seconds is a feat. I mean, it's remarkable. And that the average podcast episode that you can capture them the whole time. So anyway, congratulations on your success, brother. Good stuff.
Thank you very much. And yet when I'm being an influencer in my personal life and posting Instagram stories, I try and keep them 3 to 5 seconds, because I say you make a 10-second story or 15-second story, people are going to click to the next thing.
You bet.
That's amazing there with the podcast figures. And I've also tried taking the parts of the daily email that people really resonate with and want to read and putting that in the podcast. There's a lot of vendor advertisements or kind of guideline updates from big aggregators, investors, or Fannie and Freddie, and people don't necessarily want to hear about those unless it's really impacting their daily life. So I've tried to make it all very relevant for people. I think people have responded well to that, and I'm very appreciative.
So I want to unpack a little bit, because for originators that are looking to get into podcasts, and Carl, you're absolutely right. There's so many people are getting into it. It's a huge opportunity to get into that, and it's honestly the costs as far as barriers to entry are very low. Technology is not, very difficult. It is easy, especially, if you want to do a video podcast, Zoom, you can do those, you don't have to travel. You want to do the audio, it's easy to do that. So how did you get started as far as the technology, first and foremost? And then after that, are you doing video? Are you just doing audio? Or are you doing both?
With a face like this, it's audio only. You already knew. The technology, so I'll tell you the technology and then I'll give you a little confession. Starting out, it was obviously you need your computer and the sound editing software, and Adobe has software that's very advanced, but for people on MacBooks, GarageBand is super intuitive, easy, and already on your computer. You don't have to pay for it, and the free version is totally fine. I edit using GarageBand. Originally, I bought a microphone, I think it was about $99, $129, a tripod stand for the microphone, and headphones. And much like my father, I travel a lot, and I actually try and travel only out of a carry-on. And so sometimes when I'm traveling, my dirty little confession is I won't bring the headphones or the microphone. I'll just record on GarageBand on the computer like this or on Zoom. And I'm sure we've seen subscriber numbers precipitously drop as sound quality falling off. The microphone certainly does make a difference, but the technology is easy. Like I said, it's microphone, headphones are even kind of optional, tripods kind of optional, then your sound editing software, and like a Zoom account to be able to bring guests on to interview them. And am I missing something?
No, I mean, that's pretty much, that's the setup. And, really, even for traveling, like I recorded some audio podcasts just on my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just doing audio, it's super simple to do, the video part of it adds a little bit. So that part of it is honestly, I think, very doable for people. Where I've seen some of the challenges and what facilitates some calls to me to figure out the technology is putting all the pieces together, and then doing it in a way that is easy to upload and to promote and to do all of those things. So is there software you're using for that? Do you have a system?
I don't do video at all. You're asking Carl?
Yeah, either one of you. It's like, what are you hosting? Do you just individually host onto Spotify and Apple? Do you use there's a lot of different podcast options out there. Some are free, some aren't.
For me, I think I would encourage you to turn the camera on when you record, Robbie. So like when I do my podcast, I do it on a Zoom meeting, just like we're on right now. Like if I was interviewing you, which I'd love to, by the way, if I was interviewing you, I turn my camera on, you turn your camera on, and we do the audio, and then I send it over to my person that, does the editing and whatnot. And they send the audio, to the standard, Stitcher,
Spotify and Apple,
Apple, and all those people. Yeah. But then they take the video component of it and they post it up on YouTube, and there's a couple others. I don't know where I think it's 27 different platforms that we do it on. It's like, gosh, it's free. We already got the content, turn on the camera. Now, I'll tell you, the podcast gets way more downloads, than we get YouTube views, but the YouTube views, hell, it's free. I don't know. We get, I'm just guessing somewhere around 1,000 downloads, give or take on YouTube, but even if it was 10 or 5, which is where it started, now it's 5 or 10 that I wouldn't have had anyway. It doesn't cost me literally anything to do. Somebody else is figuring out the technology of uploading the video. And so when we record on Zoom, Zoom says, how do you want the content? Do you want audio only? Do you want video too? And she does audio only to the podcast platforms and the video, up to the YouTube. And, I've learned through Ginger and her expertise on video. It's like, there's definitely something to be said about the connection of when people see what you look like. And I'm not saying this to be funny, but, and it, not being a Brad Pitt myself by anybody's definition, there's still a connection made, when people see who you are and what you are. And I purposely record mine, and I call this my communications room. It's my hobby room. I'm a ham radio operator. And so I've got all my radios and microphones and whatnot behind me just to, make it a little bit more personal, as opposed to having sitting in a sterile office in a, building somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
in Las Vegas.
Yeah. So it just lets, it makes, I don't know, to me that I think one of the secret sauces is being approachable, and I'm a real person just like you kind of thing has always been a big thing to me. So yeah, with it. And dude, you guys are cranking out content like daily, which is, so I do mine twice a week, which, I find that hard to do. I'm awed that you guys can pull off, and you pull off some great content, and that y'all do that on a daily basis, man. My hat's off to you.
Thank you very much. So I had thought about doing video, and then people have pushed me to do video, and I should probably reach out to you after this and follow up, because in my mind, my economist brain always said, if it takes me an hour or 2 hours a day just to do the audio and I get paid X amount, I'm not going to be making as much per hour doing the video. You got to pay a video editor and you got to worry about YouTube. But there's been enough demand for it that I certainly feel like I should look into it. And I like the personal side of things that you just said about seeing someone's face, because there's interviews that I'll do. I'm on the Pacific time zone, and there's people on the East Coast, and I'll talk to them at 6 a.m. my time, and I'm bleary-eyed getting out of bed, and I don't want them to see me. But whenever I see anybody on the video, then you see what they're like. You see, you can get a lot of cues from their body language, and that's good. Real quick on the distribution side of things, because you touched on that. I use a podcast host called Buzz Sprout.
Yep, used it.
Like $20 a month or
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah.
When I upload my episodes to there and put the description in and the little album artwork, as long as I'm linked to Spotify, Pandora, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever it is, it automatically distributes it out for me.
Yeah,
So
you just set it up one time and then it does the RSS feed. Yeah, those are good options. I will tell you, I just saw some research recently that YouTube, and I don't know if it's on downloads or just on views, but it has recently passed views on video podcasts over Spotify. And so YouTube is definitely putting some time into it. And I wouldn't be surprised if TikTok doesn't down the road too. So things as far as thinking about, and honestly, Robbie, on like for us on the podcast we do, we go live. So, having a set time and having that, and then we just take that recording. It's in Zoom. So we have the audio and we produce it in audio. And then we also have the video. We post that onto our YouTube. My editor honestly just bumps out the front and bumps out the end, puts our intro on, makes a thumbnail. And so it's really not that hard. If you're doing a clean interview and you're saying, hey, we're going to run with it and whatever happens, then it doesn't have to be that time consuming. So just something to think about down the road.
Yep.
Because I would
Yeah, we
love
don't edit any of ours. Like mine is completely 100% unedited.
Yep.
I'll take it if I keep mine rated PG. People tell me they listen on the way to the school with the kids and whatnot. And, again, as loan officers, sometimes they want their kids to know what they do as a loan officer. So they listen to listen with their kids. So short of somebody, dropping something that I wouldn't want my, let's say, 12-year-old to hear, we'll edit out, which is almost never, because people know it. I tell them up front, keep it PG, but if something slips, we'll bleep that one thing out. But other than that, we put bumper on the front, bumper on the back, and that's it. And in my case, I got somebody in the office that, we pay, I don't know, $20 an hour or something like that, and she does a fantastic job I think we have 6 different podcasts that we do. And they're all of them completely unedited. Just, I stumble for words. I lose my place sometimes, but that's just, I don't know. I think that's part of keeping everything real. I think in our marketing, I learned long ago, I don't want to try to look like CNN or Fox, because then people start to judge me compared to those. And those are, professional spokesmodels that are at the top of their game. And I'm not going to win that battle. So if I try to look like them, they're going to beat me. So I keep a very casual, maybe to a fault actually, but I keep a very casual approach just for that purpose. And dude, you got a great look, man. You got you're sporting the cap and you got the little vest jacket on, and that's it's a perfect look, man.
I told Ginger I only did this because I couldn't control my hair. I'd like to ask before we run out of time, Ginger, most of the people that come up to you and say, I'm interested in a podcast, what do they view as the biggest hurdles or impediments to actually starting?
It's very similar to the same with video. It's, what are my topics? What am I going to talk about? Do I have to have a theme? Does it have to be the same all the time? And then guests. Honestly, for originators, and I have a call when I'm done here is helping someone set up their podcast. And so just that, what is your branding? I always recommend get a URL, tie it to your URL, get a name, something that's recognizable. And then it's easy to get. I mean, you said that, Carl, only one person said no. If you're an originator, you think about, make a phone call. You're making a phone call to a real estate agent, a financial planner, insurance agent, whatever. Why not call them and, hey, I'd love to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Yeah. Or top real estate agents. I've never had a real estate agent say, no, I don't want more exposure, right? Ever.
Right.
And you know what I think it really boils down to? I think it's their fear of perfectionism, or their fear of it's not going to be perfect. And that's what holds them back. Like, what if I stutter? What if I lose my place? What if I've done all those things.
Yeah. And things happen. I mean, sometimes you're traveling. I've done mine.
The dog walks in the background
on the road. I had a guy walking. I don't know if I don't think you were on that call. I was traveling up to Washington. I had to do it remote. We do video. So I pulled it up, and I, honest to God, had a guy walking a raccoon on a leash that walked behind me. It was like epic. Like I can't make that stuff up. So definitely doing that. So I think
you do live in the Northwest, right? We always keep that in mind. You do live. we have pet possums here, so
ours is raccoons. Yeah. So we are getting close. Timing I think is important. We keep ours at 30 minutes, which is good. But I do want to ask you, and I didn't set you up for this, Robbie, but I think for those of you that are listening, we're coming in, we're into 2023. We've come off of a very challenging year in 2022, and overcoming those challenges and having that mindset is critical right now. I know maybe about a year and a half ago, you were in a very serious biking accident out of the country and had some serious recovery time. And so how did you handle that mindset of overcoming that challenge? How did you get through that?
Well, since a lot of people know I ride bikes, I will say I actually was hit while I was a pedestrian. I was in London. The cars come from the wrong way,
Oh, I thought you were riding a bike. So
no. But no worries. It was still a big injury. I'm going to sound so cliche. It's kind of like control the things you can control and one day at a time. Progress isn't always linear. Growth isn't always linear. There's days where you're 2 steps forward and there's days where you're 2 steps back, and understanding that we have a lot of time in some senses, where, and I mean that in the sense of everything I've ever looked forward to in my life, getting my driver's license or, going, asking some girl out,
Bye, Carl.
it's all in the past. It's all happened, and so to think, rehab is going to take several months. I don't have the time for this. You do, and as your life goes on, you'll see that it was worth putting in the effort. And I think that's, I'll tie it back to the podcast and stay relevant and say, a lot of it can seem daunting to say, oh my God, I'm going to actually publish this and get my voice out there. But just kind of breaking it down into manageable chunks that you can get to the point where you're actually publishing is great.
I love that. Taking that first step and one day at a time is so critical. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on here. We loved having you. We'd love to have you again. And anything we can do to help, by all means, let us know. Where can people find your podcast? What's the name of your podcast?
Name of the podcast is Chrisman Commentary, Daily Mortgage News. You can find it wherever you get your podcast from. Pandora, Spotify, Apple Music. I don't know what people use these days, but search Daily Mortgage News. You can find it there. And you can also find it by going to robchrisman.com, where I should say, there's some good job advertisements for those that might have been displaced and are looking to stay in the mortgage industry. Yeah.
I think as an industry, we rely on Rob and the information there so much. And we love his story of how he got, started doing what he was doing. And it was really about sharing and making a difference. And I can see you definitely come from that same heart of giving. And so we appreciate that. And glad to see you continuing on. And so have a great holiday season. Enjoy your time. I think you're going to be spending time with your sister. I think Rob said he's going to be there. So tell him happy holidays. And for all of you who are listening, happy holidays to you too. So thanks so much. We'll see you in 2023.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.